Home Group, joined by Eric Murrietta at Homeowners Financial Group. We're going to talk about some pretty interesting stuff today, kind of a general market update, and then something that you are telling me about, which is like 3 questions to ask yourself about like how do you talk to yourself.
Yeah, and we had talked about you getting a name, but you're Klein Home Professionals now. I like that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I think that's really cool.
We're going to have Alana joining the team.
Okay,
and,
that's super
once
cool.
she gets licensed, and then that's kind of what we're going with.
So. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, yeah, I'd love to hear our market update, and then for sure, I think I've been thinking a lot about just the mental side. I think we talk to ourselves a lot, so we're going to talk a little bit about what are we saying to ourselves, and when we find out what we're saying to ourselves, what questions should we ask ourselves to kind of move us along. And I think it'll be a good conversation. You can ask me a bunch of questions on it, and we can kind of flesh it out, but it'll be fun. So, but tell me about what's going on. What are you seeing in the market?
So the market is bananas.
Okay.
I had a listing that I put up, and it's in a really good price point, but $220,000. We put it up on Saturday afternoon, had 2 showings before 6 o'clock that day, and then we had 6 showings the next day, and we had 3 offers come in.
Wow.
And so it's 220, but we got over asking, just insane. It's just crazy. And then I went to
so you had 8 showings and 3 offers within 24 hours?
Dude, within 30 hours.
30 hours?
Showings.
Okay, that's crazy.
And then I did some showings with a client the day before.
Okay.
And we visited the houses right around the same price point, and with more coming in. And it was just like, the market is bananas if you're at 250 right now.
And so that's the range, that 250, if you're in that what are you seeing? What range are you seeing?
Yeah, so anything between it's impossible to find anything for $150,000 anymore, but anything between that and 250 for a house is selling super fast.
Okay.
And I would even venture as far to say anything under 350, it's going to move really quickly as long as it's priced right.
Okay. Interesting.
So it's crazy.
That's really cool. That's awesome. Well, on our side with the market, obviously, the Fed cut rates again last week, so congratulations, your money is worth less in your savings account and you can get a cheaper auto loan. There's not always a direct correlation with the bond market. So when it comes to the bond market overall, rates have just kind of stayed flat. Obviously, we did get a little bit of a boom, which we sometimes see, where the pricing got better for about 24 to 36 hours. And then it just came right back up. We're actually getting alert to locks today, basically meaning that the pressure is on the high side for rates to just keep kind of not trending up necessarily, but not getting easier. So if you look at a 6-month snapshot, which I was looking at with a client yesterday, the 10-year treasury was about 2.6, which was about 6 months ago. Our low point that we saw was right after Labor Day. We were at 1.44%, so those were the best rates that we saw. Spiked up in the middle of September, came back down early October to about 1.56, and then spiked back up. All that to say is that the volatility that we're seeing is that we're not really moving up, but it's testing this threshold. So on the technical side, the pricing under, when you get to the lower end is getting more expensive, which means that they're tightening things up, which means there's a higher possibility and it's more likely that the rates are going to go higher. So homes are super affordable. They're going really fast. Rates are still really low, which is helping with pricing for borrowers trying to get into these homes, which I think is also exasperating the fact that there's so many different offers, because right now is a great time to buy. So it kind of goes hand in hand, but we'll see where it fleshes out. But ultimately, monetary easing just kind of shows you that they're kind of continue to try to spur on the economy. So we'll see how it plays itself out. But
so one thing you said that's super interesting is that your money being worth less in your savings account.
And
so recently, and you can ask Alana about this, I've gotten really into these financial YouTube videos.
Okay.
And one of the things that we need to do is get a high interest or a high yield savings account.
Right.
And they're super cool, and I've been looking at them for 5 months. I should have pulled the trigger earlier. But what started at 2% for a lot of these is down to 1.8%. And that's negligible, kind of.
Sort of.
But over time,
that's
a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. When you think about it too, we don't realize we're the savings account that people have that's not even outpacing inflation.
Yeah.
Your money's basically worthless. It's worth less every single day it sits in a 0.01% account. So if you've got money in savings, try to find something that's high yield to get at least some of that back. At least try to keep pace with inflation, so your money's worth the same amount next year as it is this year. Because if you're not, then you're in trouble. And that's where it's interesting on the monetary easing. We only hear what they tell us in the news sometimes. We don't think about it independently, or we don't think about it critically, and then say, okay, how is this really impacting me personally? Obviously, you're not always going to be in the market for a house, but you're always going to be having money come in and money go out. So how are you going to use that money that's coming in? How can you be smart with it when it's there? So yeah, it's super fascinating. And I'm just like you. I don't always think about that stuff enough, or I think about it and then I go, I'll do something about it, and then I forget. But when you think about it and go, your money's like worth less, like literally sitting there. That's why they tell you don't put it under a mattress, because $10,000 today, and that's a lot of money, is not going to be worth the same amount 10 years from now,
or
even next year, right? I mean, you could go 10 years out, but super fascinating. And so yeah, congratulations, your money's worth less in the bank. They're gonna let you borrow it cheaper, but you don't really want to be a slave to the lender, and at the end of the day, you will be if you're not able to make your money grow. So. Yes, get with a financial professional, right? Outside of that, we'll have to have one on too, and we should do like a three of us having a chat about that. So yeah, Paul would probably love to do that. So cool. That's cool. Yeah. So what else is going on?
Not much, man.
Okay.
Yeah. Staying busy, which is good. Lots of buyers. We need more sellers. So if you're thinking about selling, that was a really good time. I'm not kidding. Like, it's not just fluff. Like, I just told you we had crazy amount of offers. And I mean, it varies by market, right? So the house was in Mesa for $220. That's why it sold so quick. I have a house in Maricopa that I've been trying to sell for like 8 months. I can't get that thing to move, and it's priced so well.
Right.
But it's just, we're at the top end of the market in Maricopa. We're at $325,000, which is like that's a lot of money for Maricopa.
Yeah. And
so it depends on the market. But if you're thinking about selling, like, now's a good time as long as you have the right house. Typically around starter homes to like move up homes. If you start getting to the higher end of your area, that's super good.
That's good. Yeah, and you could sell, maybe buy something a little bit more expensive, but with rates as low as they are, depending on when you buy, you might be able to get something for the same price, especially if you've got some equity and you can put it into it. So it's always good. You got to look at that, all that stuff. So
it's for sure.
Yep.
So tell me about this 3 questions thing. So you kind of brought it up.
Yeah. So I mean, I think for me, like, as we evolve, I think, again, kind of thinking critically about things that we hear. One of the things that's always interesting to me is this idea of being self-aware. We talk about that a lot, and I wrote an article last month about being self-aware, and one of the things in it was that, to be really self-aware, you have to understand that you're not just thinking about yourself, you're thinking about other people, but before you can actually get to that point, you have to kind of stop and say, what are the things that I'm asking myself? What are the things that I'm telling myself? Right? So I read a book, it's called With Winning in Mind. It's from a guy named Lanny Basham. He was a former Olympic rifle shooter, right? So he has this whole mental management protocol that he teaches, top end athletes and, top end professionals about just the mental side of things and how to kind of, break through these certain platforms. And one of the things that he spoke about, which really struck me, was what do we do with an activity that we participate in, and then how do we improve upon that activity? And he said, well, part of the problem is the things that we tell ourselves, right? So you have a young daughter now, I have kids, and some of the things that we do is, and we're all pretty much the same. Our kids come home from school, and what do we ask them? How was your day? Well, it's not a critical enough question, right? Not only to be asking yourself, but really to be asking of somebody else, right? Kid goes to practice, you say, how was practice today? Did you have fun, right? These are just standard questions that people just throw out there, but there's nothing really behind it, right? So he postulates that not only do we have to ask other people questions, but we have to ask ourselves questions internally. The first 2 are pretty kind of simple questions, but the first one is, ask yourself, what did you do well? Right? Instead of asking yourself what you didn't do right, or instead of asking yourself what went wrong, which is where a lot of us tend to slant, right? Like we intend to be positive, but we slant to this like idea of negativity. And so you have to ask yourself these questions. What did I do well, right? And think about it. If you ask your kid, he comes home from school or she comes home from school, and you say, hey, what did you do well today? They have to think about that. They can't just fluff it off. Of course, my son's 6, so he still fluffs it off. But if I ask it to him over and over and over again, by the time he's 11 or 12, I can say, what did you do well today? I'm like, I did really well today on my science test, or I did really well at whatever. And I think for us, like, we have to ask ourselves that question a lot, especially when it comes to being in sales or whatever your profession is. You go through an entire day, and you could ask yourself at the end of the day, what did I do well today? Did you hug your wife enough, right? Like, and that's something I did well today. Like, I gave attention to my kids where I needed to. So I think sometimes that's the those are the places that we have to become more self-aware, and I think the nice part about it is like this positive spin, right? What did you do well? The second thing is, what did you learn, right? We're always these people who are like, hey, we have to be lifelong learners, but we never stop and say, what did I learn, right? So you do something well, instead of saying, what did I not do well, you say, well, what did I learn? And normally what you learned is something that you can improve upon, right? And so you say, hey, what did you learn today? Obviously, simple question, but sometimes it could be as simple as my son learning that knocking water bottles off the sideboards on a hockey practice is a bad idea. And why is it a bad idea? Because coaches don't like it. But he learned something, right? So next time he's not going to do that. But as we get more and more critical and we're trying to gain that extra %, we should always ask ourselves, what did I do well today? Did I listen well? Did I communicate what I wanted to communicate effectively? Like, you know what I mean? What did I learn about that activity so that we can do something with it? And then really for me, this kicker, that the question is just kind of mind-blowing to me because we never ask ourselves this question. What are we going to do about it? Because I think for me, it's really good, right? So you say, hey, what did I do well? What did I learn? And then the question that nobody ever gets to is, what are you going to do about it? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, the only way that we can change how we're self-aware or change your behavior or change your pattern is to act on that and to make that a change. And so it's a call to action. I think it can be a call to action for clients. It can be a call to action for friends. Like, what are we going to do about the information that we just learned, right? I mean, and you can do it in any situation. But I think for me, that's the question that is missing in people becoming more self-aware, because you have to understand that you've got to take action with the information that you know that you've told yourself or that you've kind of learned. And so for me, that's the big kicker. What am I going to do about it? And then am I going to take the action that's going to improve so that the next time perhaps I do what I did well, I do it again, and maybe I learned what I did that I learned, now I've improved upon. So so I'm continuing to improve, and now I can ask myself those questions again, right? The next practice, the next event, what did I do well? What did I learn? What am I going to do about it? Am I going to make that change? And so I think those things are super fascinating. I had a great experience over the weekend around a run. So have you ever heard of a Ragnar Race?
Yes, you told me about this.
I told you, right? So
which is nuts.
It was nuts, but it's interesting, right? Because you have to ask there are two things too. One of the things that's really important is, and it was interesting to me to just kind of have these conversations with the group that we were with, because there was all like different viewpoints about it, right? People were scared, they were hesitant, they were nervous about it, they had all these ideas. And I had read a book earlier this year as well. I'm a big reader. It's called Relentless. And in the book, the first thing he says is, don't think. And so when I was approached with the idea of doing this Ragnar Race, it was a simple text message from a buddy, and I said, yeah. I didn't really think about it. I just thought, sounds like a challenge. I'm sure we can figure it out. And then throughout the whole process, like, people would come at me and they're like, aren't you worried? Da, 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 da. And I just, the thing I kept telling myself is, don't think. Don't think, don't think. Because we can wind ourselves up, right, about all this crazy stuff. Well, the long story short, this Ragnar Race, it's trail running. There's 3 different legs. You run about 15 miles. You do it overnight. It was crazy. It was fun. But in those moments, like, I'm going through this and I'm just continuing to be self-aware, and I'm asking myself, what did I do well at the run? What did I learn about the trail? What am I learning as I'm kind of going through it? And then what am I going to do about it, right? Like, what action can I take as I move forward to the next step and to the next piece of this race? And I think what was really cool is we did it. It was fun. It was challenging. It stretched myself, but I didn't think, and I just went in, and then I was critically asking myself these questions as we were going through it, and it was awesome. Like, a super cool experience. So I would recommend it for anybody. I mean, and some of the people in our group, they admittedly hadn't trained, so they had a little bit more nerves about, I don't run much, and I'm an avid gym goer, so I felt like I was in good shape, and I'm like, I can probably manage my way through it. So there was some nervousness on their part, but it was fascinating. Like I said, that stuff's just really cool. So yeah.
So it's really interesting because, like, a lot of people ask me about, like, what it's like being a realtor and stuff. And,
right.
Like, yeah, there's the sales aspect of it, and there's the getting clients and stuff. But, like, one of the hardest parts is, like, being self-motivated. Or, like, not being too critical of yourself. There are days when I think that I'm going to accomplish a lot of things, and I don't.
Right.
Maybe I'm driving all day. Maybe there's a fire I got to put out. Something just nuts, right? And it's really easy to look at your to-do list and be like, I didn't get anything done, but then you forgot about everything else you've done.
Right.
So it's interesting to like put it in my perspective and say, like, hey, I need to ask myself, like, what did I do well today?
Yes.
That's the first thing I should ask myself.
Yes.
And I think that's a big one.
Yeah, and I think that goes across all platforms, right? Because we all deal with that. Whether you're a realtor or whether you're, you run a company or whether you're an employee for somebody, we all have those days where we're like, we didn't do anything. And you're like, well, stop. Like, you did some stuff well. Maybe you didn't accomplish everything you thought you were going to accomplish, but we can all find things that we did well. We can all stop and say, what did I learn today? And then we can say, what are we going to do about it tomorrow, right? Because the only way to, again, this is about becoming self-aware. The only way to make the changes is to not get into this cycle of, I didn't accomplish anything, and you throw your hands up. And, I wish I had a better example off the top of my head, but I don't right now. But there's just so many times in our lives where that's the self-talk that we have that we're just not paying, that we're not even aware that the self-talk is causing this perpetual cycle that we can't get out of, right? And we're all far more capable to do things than what we think we are. And I think, that was another thing that was running through my head is I'm far more capable, I'm more capable than I think, right? Like whatever you think you can do, like it's probably times 10. And that's what's amazing to me is like we don't even consider that, right? Like, if you think you can run 5, you could probably run 10.
It's true.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like if you think you can close 10 deals a month, you could probably close 20. The only limitation is the limitation we place on ourselves, but we first have to start with the ending that cycle of this self-talk of I had a bad day or I didn't accomplish this, and you're always going to do something well. You just may not like what it was about, but you can do anything well. And I think those are the things. That's this idea of like self-awareness and we hear a lot of it because we hear all the positive images and all the positive stuff. It's different when you really start doing the last piece, which is what are you going to do about it? What action are you going to take? Are you just going to not think like I did and just go and do it and just figure it out, right? Or are you going to continue to overanalyze and think about all the things that could go wrong or all the things that you have to do? It's not hard. But it's fun. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
So 2 of those things, like overanalyzing, and like not taking action. Okay, I literally just said like I didn't open a high interest yield account, and I should have. Not that it's locked in, but like I could have earned 2% for 3 months instead of 1.8, and it matters. I promise. Right. It's a really basic example. But the other thing too is that like what are you gonna like? So one thing that like we're trying to do with bringing Alon on board and like starting the team is like systemize things. Because I recognize that like I do well with clients when I have them and I enjoy those things. I recognize that like every transaction I've like looked back at it, it's gone different. And like I don't do things the same way. And sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. And I need to start taking stock in everything that I do. And this is just on a business side, but in my personal life too. But these are the things I did well in this transaction. What did I learn? Okay, well I learned this, and then how do I fix that so that next time it's even better? Right. And how do you build a system around that to make sure that like it's, because I mean, okay, I was a long time ago I was at a sales training thing. I was talking about like, is it easier to start a sandwich company and try to grow locally and then try to grow in your state and then whatever, or is it easier to buy a Subway because a Subway has a system, right, and it's duplicatable and so it's like how do we. So it's just interesting. Like this is coming at a really good time for myself.
Well, and I think, and again, to speak to that piece, right? Like some people might find that system of Subway to be the thing that they need to do, right? But then there would be other people that they get excitement and energy from creating this other thing, and they don't, overanalyze things. And I think again, I don't think analyzation of things is bad. I don't think being a critical thinker is bad. I think what we have to do is, again, the kicker in all of this is what are you going to do about it? When you know something and then don't take action, you can't then move to another action, right? Like if you know I should open up a high interest yield account, the only thing that's keeping you from doing it is the routine or the habit or something you did before that's not making you move to that next level. But when you know something that you should do and then you don't do it, then you're just keeping yourself in, again, this sort of like closed loop or this closed circuit. And I think that's where a lot of people, unfortunately, that's where they live. That's where they end up. Like we know a lot of stuff, but we don't do a lot of stuff with the stuff that we know. And it's an interesting thing. It's hard. It's not always easy. And you see it sometimes in clients. Like the client knows they should pay a little bit more on the mortgage every month because it's going to benefit them in the long run, and then they just don't, right? And then they wonder, where'd all my money go, right? Or, we've talked about financial stuff, right? Like, you want to make more money and you want to have more money, or you want to save more money, but then you don't create a budget. Well, like, it's a simple action step, but we don't want to take those actions. So it's fascinating. So as you guys are listening, or as you're thinking about, hey, how can I become more self-aware? I mean, I think one, you got to read some stuff about it, but two, like, the only thing that I would tell you is when you know in your mind and in your heart and in your gut that you're supposed to do something, take action. Do the thing that you know you should do, and then, like, it'll kind of perpetuate itself in the future. Don't do wrong things, obviously, but do the things that you know that you should be doing, and I think those things are really important. I think that's how you become more self-aware, and you challenge yourself, and you push through. And again, like I said, don't think, right? I mean, like, there's so many times where we overthink it, or we say, hey, maybe or you think about it and you know you should do it, but you don't just complete the task. And it's like, just complete the task and everything will be good. But I think the key is just that idea of being cognizant of the self-talk, and then being smart about the questions that we ask ourselves. It's going to lead to, like, super cool action. So if you would have told me last year that I was going to do a Ragnar Run and I'd run 21.9 miles over 20 hours, and I don't camp, I slept on concrete with my bag because I didn't have a pillow, wrapped up next to a heater, like, it's not me, like, I'm not an outdoorsy guy, but again, like, I know this about myself, and I know that everybody out there has this same mentality. You're far more capable to do things that than even you can consider. And as long as you don't think and you just take action, you never what's going to come of it. And the coolest part for me is not even the activity. Like, you bond with people that you don't know really well. I mean, I went into it and I knew, like, a couple of the people, but the rest of them were all, like, new. Like, we had kind of known each other, but I don't know. It's just really cool. So, anyhow, hope that helps. Any other questions? Like, what else do you think?
So, do you know David Goggins? Have you heard of him?
I do. David Goggins. Yeah, his name's been around, or more in the forefront of my mind over the last kind of few months. I've seen some stuff with him recently, so I have not read his book.
Me either.
Okay.
So let's just, like, be very clear.
Okay.
But one of the things that he talks about a lot is, like, to speak about, like, being capable of more than you let yourself do.
Yep.
One of the things he talks about is, like, when you feel like you're done, when you feel like you have nothing left to give, you're only 40% of the way there, and you still have another 60% to go.
Right.
And it's like, when you start thinking about that, it's like, yeah, but it's hard. But it's like, yeah, but that's how you grow and get to the next step. And, like,
it is.
It's okay. I don't work out a lot, and I have been lately. And I've noticed for the last couple of weeks, like, I haven't been sore.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is cool, but then I was like, that's not good. Like, that means that, like, I need to do something. And so yesterday, I lifted a little bit heavier than I normally do, and, like, I am a little bit more stiff today. But it's like that's gonna help me get to where I need to go. And doing the hard things now will help you, get to where you want to be.
Yeah.
And so you can always give a little bit more. It's tough.
Yeah, I think it is. It's definitely tough. It's definitely not easy. And again, though, it's like in those moments of habit being difficult, where he's like, you're only 40% of the way there, which I love. I never heard that. But if you're only 40% of the way there, then you have to stop and go, okay, but what am I learning? What am I doing? And then, like, you just add all the, and then you just, like, you push through it. And, again, just because the run is fresh on my mind, when I'm running up a mountain at, 1:30 in the morning, and I'm thinking, what am I doing? I just thought, one step in front of the other, and you'll get to the finish line. There's nothing that was going to destroy me that day. I was going to be fine. I was going to be sore, but there's a lot of that stuff. And my buddy said it before I started the run. He said, it's just mental. He goes, you either can or you can't, but it's up to you. And I think that's interesting. And I think we should push ourselves. We push ourselves in business and the things that we do at work. Push ourselves with the way that we love on our kids and love on our spouses. Like, we have to push ourselves and go, I can love my wife even more than I'm loving her, right? Like, we don't even ask ourselves that. Is there a deeper way that I can, love on my friends or love on my family? And like, these things are really important. And it's like this whole, like, world that kind of opens up for whatever you want to do. But you have to stop every now and then and just ask yourselves the right questions, and don't let that, the questions that you're asking yourselves or life kind of eat you up. You have to kind of stay in this spot. But I love that. Yeah. I'm totally gonna use that. You're only 40% of the way there when things are bad. Because I'm like you. Some days you have bad days. Like, don't get us wrong. Like, I had bad days. I freaking hated the run. When I had to do my last run, I thought, why did I sign up for this? I could have been in bed hanging out with my wife, and yet at the end of the day, you know, whatever, right? It was something that at the end of the day, like, you know, I can say that I, you know, accomplished while, you know, I'm still running on the trail, and there's like these dudes just like, you know, zooming right past me as if I'm standing still, and the only thing I could think of was stay in your lane, bro. Like, I just stay in my lane, and you know, we'll see how it goes. But hopefully this was helpful. I mean, I love talking about this stuff, and I think it's fantastic.
This is super good. It's really interesting.
Cool.
So.
Well, awesome. Well, if you need to buy or sell, call this guy.
And if you need anything mortgage related, refinance, purchases, call Eric. He's great. He's awesome.
That's awesome. Klein Home Professionals. I think that's super cool.
Yeah, we branded and everything, dude.
That's awesome, man. Well, we'll get that up there.
Yeah.
We'll make it awesome.
It'll be cool for sure.
All right. We'll see you guys soon.
Cool. Thanks, guys.